Right now, in Central America, a sloth is climbing down its tree once a week to do the riskiest thing it does. On the ground, the predators are already waiting for the delivery. Why an animal built never to touch the ground climbs down anyway has a strange answer. And the same trick that kept it alive is now the one killing it. Meet an animal that has been called lazy for centuries. It is not lazy, it is broke. This is the three-toed sloth, Bradypus. It hangs in the canopy of Central and South America, and it moves at about 4 meters a minute when it bothers to move at all. Here is what nobody sees in that picture. The sloth eats leaves, almost only leaves, and leaves are the worst food in the rainforest. Tough, fibrous, loaded with chemicals the tree makes so that nothing will eat them. It is trying to run its entire body on salad. Not salad as a side, salad as the whole restaurant. A three-toed sloth burns about 160 kilojoules a day for every kilogram of body weight. A koala, already famous for doing nothing, burns 410. So the sloth made a decision: if you cannot earn more, spend less. Spend almost nothing. Everything that follows is that one decision taken to its limit. So how do you squeeze a living out of a leaf? You take your time, more time than any other mammal on Earth. The leaf goes into a stomach with multiple chambers, the same idea as a cow, a fermentation tank packed with bacteria that take it apart from the inside. Slowly is the word. Food stays inside a three-toed sloth for 11 to 30 days. One leaf, up to a month. Your last meal was gone in about a day. This animal is still working through something it ate before your last haircut. And because nothing leaves quickly, everything stacks up. The gut is permanently full. The contents of a sloth's abdomen can top a third of its body weight, 37%, measured in a wild brown-throated sloth. Imagine walking around with a third of yourself being lunch from 2 weeks ago. It is the slowest digestion ever recorded in a plant-eating mammal. And it is not a flaw. It is the engine. But spending nothing has a price, and the first bill comes as cold. Muscle is what makes a mammal warm. It burns fuel, fuel makes heat, and when you get cold, your muscles fire in tiny bursts, thousands of times a minute. You shiver without asking. A sloth has roughly a quarter of its body weight in muscle. Most mammals its size are closer to half. It cannot shiver. There is no button. The one automatic response every other mammal has to cold. This animal does not own. So its body temperature drifts with the air around it, like a reptile with fur. It climbs to a sunny branch and warms up. It slides into the shade and cools down. And when it gets cold anyway, what then? Then the fermentation tank stops. The bacteria need warmth to work, and if the sloth drops below their working temperature, they quit. The leaves stay in there, undigested. A sloth can die of starvation with a stomach completely full of food, wearing a fur coat. Look at it hanging there, absolutely still, doing nothing. That is the weapon. Above it hunts the harpy eagle, which eats more sloths than anything else alive. It scans the canopy for hours, not looking for a shape, but for a shift in weight, a branch moving wrong. Movement is what gives you away up here. So the sloth does not move, and to finish the job, it turns green. Its hair is grooved and cracked, and it soaks up rainwater like a sponge. Algae grow in those grooves. Trichophilus, an alga found in one place on the planet, the fur of a sloth. And where there are gardens, there are tenants. A single sloth has been found carrying more than 120 moths. Cryptosis chalupi, the sloth moth, which spends its entire adult life in there and nowhere else. This animal is not an animal. It is a rental property with algae in the garden and moths who never signed a lease. A slow, quiet, green thing that has stopped being a body and started being an address. So, an animal built around never being seen, never leaving the canopy. What could make it climb all the way down to the forest floor? Once a week, it does exactly that. It comes down the trunk, slowly. It digs a small hole at the base of its tree. It goes to the toilet. It covers the hole. Then it climbs back up. That round trip costs about 8% of its daily energy. An animal that has none to spare. On the ground, it manages roughly 2 meters a minute, dragging itself on its arms because its legs can't carry its weight. Every claw it owns is a hook built for hanging. Down here, it is a man climbing a ladder that someone laid down in a car park. And more than half of all recorded adult sloth deaths happen right here, on or near the ground. Jaguars, ocelots, dogs. This is the most dangerous thing in a sloth's entire life, and it books the appointment itself. Why? Honestly, we are not sure. In 2014, researchers proposed a deal. The moths ride down, lay eggs in the dung, and their descendants fly back up, loaded with nitrogen that fertilizes the algae. Algae the sloth then eats off itself. A garden paid for in manure. It is a beautiful idea. It is also disputed. Later work argues sloths barely eat the algae at all, and that the trip is just an old habit from ancestors that lived on the ground, never costly enough to be selected away. So the strangest behavior of the strangest mammal alive, and the best answer science has is, we are working on it. Here is the part that ruins the joke. Put that same helpless animal in a river, and it changes. It swims. About 13.5 meters a minute, nearly 7 times faster than it crawls. The punchline of the forest floor is, in water, the quickest version of itself it will ever be. The gut helps. Weeks of fermentation make it buoyant, and the long arms that are useless for walking are exactly the right shape for pulling water. It can slow its heart and stay under for minutes. It cannot walk across a road. It can cross a river. Strange resume. So why does an animal that moves better in water than on land spend its whole life avoiding the ground? Because the trees are the deal. And the deal only works if the trees are touching. Everything about this animal is built for hanging, right down to the parts you cannot see. Think about that stomach again. All of that weight hanging directly onto its own lungs every hour of every day, upside down. Anything else would be suffocating slowly under its own dinner. So the sloth grew anchors. Sheets of fibrous tissue pin the stomach and liver to the lower ribs, and the kidneys to the hips, holding the organs off the chest. It keeps its internal organs on hangers, like a wardrobe that decided to become a mammal. Researchers estimate it saves 7 to 13% of the energy it would otherwise burn just breathing upside down. And the grip costs nothing. Those claws are not claws. They are fingers and toes, the bones grown long and curved under a sheath of keratin. Tendons lock them shut. No muscle, no effort. which is why dead sloths have been found still hanging in the canopy. Days later, nothing let go. There was never anything holding on. Go back to the animal everyone calls lazy. Nothing here is laziness. It is the most disciplined budget in the animal kingdom. A body that gave up shivering, gave up muscle, gave up speed, gave up leaving its own tree to live on food nobody else wanted. And it worked. For 64 million years, it worked. Slowness was never the weakness. Slowness was the strategy. The strategy has one condition. It assumed the forest would always be there. It is not. Roads cut the canopy into islands, and a sloth cannot jump a gap. It has to come down and cross. 80% of sloth and anteater species have been recorded as roadkill. For mammals overall, that number is 8.5%. The animal built to never touch the ground is now one of the most likely on the continent to die on it. One lane of tarmac at a time at 2 meters a minute. And on one small island off Panama lives Bradypus pygmaeus, the pygmy sloth. Critically endangered since 2006. Its whole world is a few square kilometers of island. It spent 64 million years learning to spend nothing and wait. It never planned for a world that stopped waiting back.